Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, as always, David Danto, and I got a couple of really cool guests around the world with me right now. I have my partner, Dave Michels, who's joining us from Portugal this morning, this afternoon, whatever time frame we're talking about. One of my oldest industry friends, Kevin McMenamy, is joining us from Oslo this morning, right?
That's right. I'm in Oslo today.
So that's a city that you've been in multiple times before for multiple reasons, and we'll get into that.
That's
Um,
right.
so this will be a great conversation. Let's get into it. Kevin is now obviously the CTO and head of software for Neat, and we'll get into the conversation now.
Kevin, you're in a brand new role at Neat, and I just saw you change seats. I know you wear multiple hats. I didn't know you sat in multiple seats.
Exactly. I just wanted to be a little bit closer to all the equipment, which I
What
So,
can
so
equipment
give
are
us
you
show you
using?
a
later.
brief introduction, a quick introduction of your role at Neat.
Yes, I'm a CTO and run the software engineering team here.
And you've been there for how long?
10 months. I joined in September of 2023.
All right. Well, that's going to be a part of our conversation. We've got a whole lot of history to cover before we get there.
So, Kevin, first of all, what equipment are you using right now? Where are you?
So I'm in Oslo, first of all, at Neat's headquarters, and I'm on a Bar Pro with 3 screens. I see both of you really fantastically well. We're using Neat Center here for the microphone array, and also if I sit and look at you guys this way, which would be awkward and uncomfortable, but for demo purposes. But if I was talking to somebody across the table, then within a few seconds the Neat Center would detect, oh, I'm looking here and switch to this camera view. And then if I turn and talk to you guys, this way on the screens, then it's going to detect that I'm looking there and
We can't
switch to
see
that.
that Neat Center. So let me just ask out of curiosity, is that sitting on the table or hanging from the ceiling?
It is sitting on the table right here.
Old
When,
school.
when you get up and walk over to the screen, we'll see it in the foreground there. So
Yeah.
so let's go backwards a little bit. You were lucky enough or unlucky enough, I don't know how you want to phrase it, to be at Cisco when video actually became a thing, working for ultimately for John Chambers. What was that experience like? I know that the Cisco vision originally was the CUVA, the Cisco Unified Video Advantage, right? Got to remember that. That's I guess that
Yeah,
was
but
SCAR.
actually that came after.
Really?
Yeah. So I've been doing video conferencing since '96. I'm super, privileged to have been a part of the industry since then. Back in the days of ISDN, H.320, and then H.321, ISDN, or I'm sorry, H.320 over ATM at a company called First Virtual. And then I joined Cisco in 2000 working on H.323 video conferencing. And then we came up with the idea for CUVA and IP and video telephony as part of the enterprise PBX solution call manager. Back then, people nowadays know it as Unified Communications Manager.
So that was the idea again for people who aren't familiar with that is like you would pick up a phone and call somebody, and if you had it and they had it, all of a sudden you'd
Yeah,
see their face on the screen when you're calling. So
and it
video
was
was
just
considered a
magic. Yeah.
bolt-on to the IP telephony, and then Charlie Giancarlo and the team around telepresence that sort of became a thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then we pivoted, really big from desktop communications with CUVA, the Unified Video Advantage, and IP phones to high-end 1080p, 30 frames per second immersive telepresence, and that was an incredible journey. Really privileged to have been a part of that.
Give
That
us
was
some
a
color
lot of
that we
fun.
may not know about that. Not, obviously, those who people are familiar with the technology, we get the technology, but what was it like inside Cisco around trying to kick that off around the bandwidth, around the network? What was that
Hmm.
experience like?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, we were essentially like a startup inside of, Cisco. So it's like fantastic, right? We had all this funding from Cisco, but we treated ourselves as like a seconded, off in another building working on this Skunkworks telepresence thing. Small team, completely focused, working like startup hours. We were out there in the parking lot, cutting up a table and painting it, and security guard came driving by. What are you guys doing? Oh, we're doing this telepresence. It's gonna be amazing. He's like, you guys are crazy, and he drove off. uh, and yeah, bringing telepresence to market was a thrill. And just the immersive experience, right? Sitting across from the table from somebody on the other end of the planet, just going, "My God, you're where? You're in Hong Kong? Holy cow! You look like you're right there across from me. It's amazing." And we weren't the only ones doing it. As you know, Tandberg had their T3 and Polycom had their RPX and HP had Halo and such. And that the success of telepresence really set us up to then start to think seriously about we need to triple down on this market. And that led to the acquisition of Tandberg, which brought me to Oslo.
Well, that's actually a great point. Talk a little bit because you were there for Tandberg's acquisition and you were there for Kano's acquisition a few years later.
Yeah, that's right.
Blending those product lines probably wasn't easy. Anything you want to tell us about that joy or those scars?
I would say very few scars, all joy. But I tend to be an optimist, so um, yeah. First of all, on a personal level, moving to Oslo was a phenomenal opportunity for me and for my family, my wife, my daughter. Our daughter was 7 at the time. She loved it. My wife loved it. I loved it working here. The Tamberg team is phenomenal. It was a joy to work with them, and I was got to wear many hats. It's kind of like part product manager, part architect, part janitor, part whatever you need help with. Getting to understand how to operate within Cisco. Uh, you know, all hand. What do you call that? Master of
Jack of
jack of
all
all
trades.
trades, master of a couple. And just here to help, right? And so I think the Tamberg team really appreciated me as an asset. And
And then you
yeah,
kind of went
we
through another transition too, because when Rowan came in, everything shifted to Spark.
the cloud, exactly right. That's right. So it's been a journey. But yeah, the here working with the Tamberg team, it was all about getting all the Tamberg endpoints to register to communications manager, so line side SIP and integration, getting the Codian MCU and telepresence server to act as conference bridges on communications manager. So really like bringing telepresence and unified communications together and integrating all of that whole, you know, all three, right? Cisco telepresence, Tamberg, and Cisco UC all together, and then we acquired Econo in 2015.
Now, where were you working when Neat emerged?
I was in London. So fast forward after 2015, Cisco acquired Econo. Fast forward 3 years later, 2018, I moved to London to act as a director of engineering for what was born out of the Codian acquisition, which became the transcoding backend of WebEx, and the on-prem conferencing portfolio, which was the Econo portfolio. And those two teams, both very close to each other, about 15-minute drive away from each other, or 15-mile drive away, depending on traffic. That can be anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes in London. Um, so I took on both of those teams and brought them under, common leadership and common vision, common goals, and all that. Even though one team was focused on prem and the other in cloud, really doing very similar things, transcoded conferencing applications, and servers, and such. So that was a really fantastic journey, and that was after Cisco Spark, Dave, because Cisco Spark started around 2014 or so, and I moved here in 2018. Sorry, so the Codian acquisition was after Cisco Spark, but then I moved here in 2018, trying to put the
But
chronology together.
when Neat emerged, that was yeah, it was after Spark. You're right. But where were you working? Were you still at Cisco at that time, or were you?
I was at Cisco, yeah, when Neat started in 2019. I'm sorry, that was the question you had asked. So Neat started late 2019 as they announced themselves at Zoomtopia. So I was still at Cisco, very much competing with me and watching them succeed. And knowing all of them, right? They're all former colleagues from Tamberg. So I was like, oh, that's a great bunch of people. Great products, super amazing industrial design. The user experience team, industrial design team at Neat is top notch, best in class. So seeing the products that they came out with, knowing the people, knowing that their ability, all of us were watching Neat closely, of course. And then fast forward to 2023, I had been at Cisco for 23 years. I was 47 years old, and I thought, Jesus, that's half my life. Almost. And so I thought, geez, maybe I should consider, for the first time in my career at Cisco, consider leaving Cisco. And I love Cisco. I think the world of Cisco. It's a great company. It always has been. I've had so many opportunities, and I owe a debt of gratitude to Cisco for all the opportunities it's given me. But it was the right thing. It was the right time for me to think about a change, and Neat.
So
So
what I
phenomenal
was trying to
company.
get to, and I guess it's kind of tricky for you because you knew everybody at Neat and you had a lot of respect for them. But I would imagine that when Neat popped up, that a big company like Cisco kind of probably was kind of dismissive of them. I would imagine that, oh, they're a fly on the wall, whatever,
Mm.
But you knew all these people, so you probably had a little more respect for that, what they were
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, I think you're right, Dave. I think lots of other people at Cisco knew all the people at Need as well. I think we all had a healthy amount of respect for them.
That's that Tandberg DNA that if you really take a step back
Exactly.
and look at it in the industry, it's in so the diaspora. There's so many different companies that have a little bit of that piece of Tandberg, and obviously,
Yeah.
at the time, you're essentially, OJ started it. OJ was running this. It was a lot of back and forth. It's almost like a volleyball game where people are coming in and out. Um, so it's interesting. So tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis at Neat. What's the magic sauce there that got you to come over?
Well, yeah. So maybe those are two different questions. So what got me to come over was we've both been talking about just in the last couple of minutes is the people, the talent. The products are phenomenal. They're so simple, elegant, easy to use. The out of box experience is best in class for anybody who hasn't experienced taking a Neat product out of the box. Pick any one of the products. It could be a Neat frame, a Neat bar. It doesn't matter. A Neat Board 50 is a really truly magical experience, and just plug it in and walk through the setup process, and you'll be floored at how simple it is. And all the microphones are built in, so you don't need cables stringing across the floor onto a microphone on the table. We do have a pad for control, and that does have a cable, of course, but that just plugs into an Ethernet jack on the floor, so there's no like cables running between the devices. It's all over IP. We'll talk about more the technology side of that a little bit later. Um, so that's what, attracted me to Neat. And then the first part of your question about what my role is, it's really a dual role, right? For as leading software engineering, it's really execution oriented, is getting it done, getting all those features done, chewing through our backlog, delivering, high quality software on time, consistently, reliably, etc. And then there's also the CTO hat, which, is much more outbound, talking to customers, going to trade shows, meeting with you guys, which I love. So it's a joy for me to be in this role and have the opportunity to do the more of the outbound stuff again.
Everyone enjoys meeting with us. That's understandable. But I was thinking about when Neat launched. It was a Zoom play. It was all about.
Yep.
It was focused 100% on Zoom, and of course, Cisco was always 100% focused on Cisco the whole time you were there.
Hmm.
And both Neat and Cisco now have moved into the Microsoft ecosystem, much bigger
Yep.
opportunity and a whole new set of requirements and user base.
Yeah.
Was that hard for you? Because you for so much of your career you saw Microsoft as the enemy, and now all of a
Mm.
sudden it's an opportunity and partner. Was that a hard shift or was that pretty easy?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question because I think, in some ways it was hard. Like personally, I was in engineering, so it's not like I was spending a lot of time, evaluating the competitors, right? Like somebody in more of a customer facing role would do. So I didn't have a whole lot of deep hands-on experience with either Microsoft Teams or Zoom, living in the WebEx bubble for the past several years. But so that part was a little hard, a bit of a learning curve for me to, instantly be an expert in, oh, let me introduce you to our new CTO. And, you feel like, oh, I have to be able to answer all the questions. Yeah. So that was certainly a bit of a learning curve for me. But it's all the same stuff, right? Whether it's Teams, Zoom, WebEx, Google Meet, whatever, it's all the same technology. We've all been working on it for, the last 26 years or whatever of my career. So, it's picking up pretty quickly. Um, it was easy in the sense that, hey, this is just the role, the transition to the new role, the new business. Microsoft is now a partner. Embrace that relationship. I get on really well with everybody at Microsoft. Ilya and I have regular sync ups. We meet with Ilya's team on a weekly basis. They were just out visiting us about 4 weeks ago here in Oslo, and they also visited Cisco and Pexip and other players here in the what's called Video Valley here in the Oslo Lysaker Fornebu area. So yeah, from that perspective, it's been no problem. Seamless transition.
So let's take advantage of the fact that you're sitting in that room, and while you're there, I want you to show us some of the stuff that's in there, and then maybe later on in the call we can get you to, disconnect and reconnect from one of the other devices. So you said you're on a
Yeah,
Bar Pro now. I see you've got some bars behind you. I see you've got the board behind you. Why don't you, as long as the camera will track, which I assume it does on the
yeah.
Bar Pro, why don't you get up and just really quickly walk around and show us what's in the room?
Yeah, and the reason I set this up is I wanted to talk, and it kind of ties into what you wanted to talk about, Dave, about what's coming in the next year, what's coming in the next
Yeah.
10 years. Our Neat's vision is to try to keep things super simple. So really, we strive to reduce, cabling complexity, lots of nerd knobs and tweaks and like just make it work. Users shouldn't have to think about it. Having tons of options is not necessarily, is sometimes a bad thing. So we try to give flexibility without introducing complexity, and not just clutter the user interface with a bunch of options and nerd knobs and things like that. And to do that, we're doing everything over IP. So the Bar Pro, which you can't see because you're on it, is mounted on top of 3 televisions, and that's
I
just
assume that's
connected
one right
to.
behind your head.
Oh yeah, exactly. Thanks. Here, let me grab it. Good suggestion. So yeah, the Bar Pro is what you guys are on there, and that's just connected to an Ethernet jack, right? Power, Ethernet, HDMI to the TVs, and then over IP, it's pairing with the Neat Pad. You can see that, and with the Neat Center, and the neat pad is, one thing you could think, oh, well, that's just control signaling, right? But the neat center is something else, right? The media is streaming from the neat center microphone array is doing all the neat audio processing like de-reverberation and noise suppression and so forth, um, and streaming that to the Bar Pro. And then the Bar Pro is deciding, is that microphone better or is that microphone better? So we're doing dynamic beam selection, which is when we met Dave. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas. Sorry, Dave. The we had announced and we were demonstrating there the dynamic beam selection, which we just released in our 24.3 release about a month ago. So
When you
so
when you
that
do that dynamic selection, is it one or the other, or do you use both mic? Like, is the other mic become a noise cancellation, or is it? Explain that a little more clearly.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question because that's why I started calling it dynamic beam selection because we're not actually mixing just yet. That's the next step for us. Right now, we're selecting which beam is best every single audio frame on a frame by frame basis. We're switching to this beam or that beam or this beam or that beam or this based on who's speaking. That means that if 2 people literally speak at the same time, one will win and the other will be slightly attenuated, because we haven't selected that beam. So we're attenuating the other beams to reduce like air conditioning noise. And, so that's how beam forming works, right? You select a beam that you want to gain up on to enhance the volume of that speaker and attenuate the others, right? In the future, we hope to literally mix. If there's 2 beams that both have energy on them, attenuate the others and mix those 2. But the reason I brought all that up is if you think about technologically, these devices now are streaming over IP, doing real-time media in a distributed architecture, right? And you could start to think about scaling that out to other use cases in a distributed architecture, and that's what brings me to the board. So if you don't mind, I'd like to show you. So, as people might be able to tell from the user experience, we're using Zoom for the meeting we're on. This is Microsoft Teams on a Neatboard 65 and our newer Neatboard 50. And one of the features that we have, it's not fully shipping yet, but we're coming out with it, is called Neat Share. And it's another example of how we're doing this distributed media processing and distributed architecture that let's pretend that we were in a meeting on this Microsoft Teams device, but I wanted to share something that I'm working on in like a Miro board or some other collaborative application on the Neatboard 50, if I just swipe out to get the Neat menu up and I hit share, instantly you see on the Neatboard 65 everything that's on that screen. Today it's only video. In the future release, we'll include audio as well, so you can like watch a YouTube video, for example, over this. And on this side, we're essentially treating it as like a virtual HDMI input. So the Microsoft Teams application thinks, oh, a user just plugged in their PC. Do you want to share that into the meeting? Yes. And that is configurable on the Microsoft Teams application, whether you want it to auto share when you plug in a computer source or whether you want it to prompt and you have to hit share, right? That's configurable by the user. So either way, it would either automatically share into the meeting or you'd have to click on your Microsoft app to say, yes, I want to share this. And then everybody in the meeting sees whatever's on this screen. So that's an example of us pairing and associating multiple devices in a distributed media architecture. And that's our vision of how we go forward is rather than having complex codecs with lots of inputs and outputs and wires running through ceilings and floors and to get multiple cameras in a large auditorium style room. Well, what if you could just take multiple Neat products, arrange them in the room the way you want them to be, a Neat Bar Pro on that wall, maybe another Neat Bar Pro on this wall, maybe a Neat Board 65 in the back, a Neat Center, which can provide like a presenter camera. Because if I'm standing, more like up here, in this position, talking to an audience, you're looking at the back of my head, but with Neat Center, then you're going to see me from this perspective instead of, from that perspective. Does that make sense? Did that flow?
Absolutely.
Great.
And the idea that these cameras and audio pickup devices are talking to each other, that's the AI that's hidden in plain sight. If I quote my buddy Kevin again, that talks about that it's not generative AI, it's this machine learning algorithm that's smart enough to recognize a face, smart enough to switch, smart enough to do everything else. And you've got that built into all your products, I guess.
Exactly.
Well, that was a very neat demo, I have to say. You did a good job there, Kevin. Looked very easy. You can't see all the little munchkins kind of behind the scenes making it all work. But
I literally am here by myself, and I did not rehearse that. I rehearsed the Neat share bit, but the getting up and doing the presenter camera thing, that was totally on the spur of the moment.
Hey, are you able to connect from one of the other devices like the Neat Frame and give us that experience while we finish this conversation?
Absolutely. Yeah, timing's perfect. Let me just drop here and I'll jump over to another room and dial in from a Neat Frame.
Okay, there'll be a magic edit here, so people won't have to wait. Only Dave Michels and I will.
Right. Yeah, you're going to play like the do-do-do music, right?
Well, now that you mentioned it, I suppose I have to. Welcome back. Now that Kevin has rejoined us from a different room, you're in one of your little demo rooms, so the lighting might not be perfect, but you're on a Neat Frame, right? Tell us about that product.
Yeah, that's right. It's a portrait mode. You can look on neat.no, you'll see it. It's a great product, super portable. You can literally, there's a little handle built into the top of it. You can just pick it up, carry it around. Just a single power cable, Wi-Fi, or Ethernet if you want to connect it to the corporate network via Ethernet. But, I use Wi-Fi on my Neat Frame at home all day long, and it works fantastic. And the, microphone array and the camera built into it and the speakers built into it. It's beautiful. You can pinch to zoom, if somebody's sharing content that's a little bit hard to read, like a PowerPoint, or sorry, like an Excel spreadsheet or something, you can just pinch to zoom, and it's a great experience sitting on a Neat Frame. Behind me is some of our engineering desks, so forgive the clutter, but I'm here at our Neat engineering headquarters in Oslo, Norway.
Okay, I got a specific question about the frame, and you don't have all the history and baggage of Neat, and you're the new guy, so this is a tricky question, because the first time I saw the frame, I said, why don't you stick a handset on it and make it a phone? Yeah. And I think Simon was going to start crying. I think, it was like, oh no, don't go there, whatever. So let me ask you, have you thought about making that a phone, or where does Zoom have any, or excuse me, does Neat have any thoughts about expanding into telephony?
That's a great question, David, especially I think in contact center, right? Video is increasingly becoming important in contact center um, products, right? If you think about like Cisco's contact center offerings and Five9 and others, video is still sort of a minority use case, but it's or like a niche use case, I guess, but becoming more prevalent, becoming more of a requirement. So I could definitely imagine use cases with agents sitting in front of a neat frame with headphones or a handset plugged in. But I think in general that the sentiment of the phone business is not really the growth market. It's not really where we want to focus. Video telephony, as we spoke about earlier, was back in the 2004 2006 time period until we kind of focused more on the high end immersive stuff with telepresence. Um, Although, having said all that, I mean, Cisco just came out with a brand new, 8800 series phone, I think, with, beautiful camera in it and beautiful screen. So, video telephony is still a thing. It's just not the market that Neat wants to be focused on.
All right. Broader picture. I would say the past year or so, the story has really been about multi-camera in the room.
Hmm.
You just demonstrated that in the other room with all these different cameras. And you were also showing multiple microphones.
Yeah.
Do you see multiple microphones as expanding as a concept?
Well, we do. Yeah, absolutely. So I showed you earlier Neat Center. That's got a 16 microphone array in the top of it. It's a phenomenal mic array. And we imagine, I don't want to set expectations. I want to set expectations appropriately here. I'm also responsible for software. So there's an element of once I say it, I have to deliver it. So we envision adding multiple Neat centers in a room. That's one step. But we also envision, as I
Well,
alluded
then they
to,
can't be called centers if you do that. Then near center or something like that.
near
You change
center
it.
and end center, yeah. Um, uh, but also sort of in if you read between the lines of the demonstration I showed you with Neat Share, and I mentioned audio is coming as part of Neat Share in a future release as well, is that those boards that I was showing you that demonstration on of Neat Share had microphone arrays in them. So imagine the microphone array in the Bar Pro that we were talking on, plus the microphone array and the Neat centers in the room, plus the microphone arrays in the board in the back of the room. We can, wire all this up in a distributed IP-based, distributed media architecture and be able to do dynamic beam selection and mixing and so we can't do that today, but that's absolutely where we see it headed. Over
Yeah,
the
but you didn't
next
even
year to
mention
two
the
years.
pad. What about the pad?
Oh yeah, thank you. I skipped that one in my mental map of the room there. Yeah, on the Neat pad, Neat has always had two microphones in the pad. And we've talked about enabling those microphones. The feature is known as mics in the pad. And I'm super excited to announce that in the upcoming release 24.4, which we're literally putting out to beta imminently, like in the next, like by the time you watch this recording, it'll be out. Um, Mics in the pad are enabled as a beta feature, and the only reason
Well,
it's
that
beta is
that
it's going to give
I
some
gotta say,
time.
Kevin, that's a really bad idea because you hang those pads outside the room on the wall. So that seems like a really bad idea to have active mics outside the room.
We wouldn't activate those. Those are running in
Oh, okay.
scheduler
You thought
mode.
of that already.
Yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
A lot of that one already. Those are running in scheduler mode. Mics are never enabled in scheduler mode. The way that it works is the Neat pad has to be paired with like a board or a bar or whatever parent device, and then they know about one another, and the bar or the board, bar pro, board 50, whatever, whichever model, uh, activates the microphones in the pad. And we're using, you'll find this probably interesting. We're using the IEEE 1588 precision time protocol for clock synchronization between them, which is why we say you have to connect them via Ethernet. Wi-Fi is harder to make that work, right? Because of the variability uh, of the transmit receive on Wi-Fi. So for now we're saying they have to be connected on Ethernet, and we negotiated P2P, and then we take the microphone signal from the Neat pads, stream it over IP to the bar and the board, and then we do all the processing there.
Seems like a lot of things are going back to wired Ethernet just because of the PoE standard.
Yeah, yeah. PoE is another reason why you'd want the Ethernet on the, especially on the pad, because you can power the pad through PoE. So you just need a single Ethernet port under the table for the pad to plug into, power IP, and then it pairs with the bar over IP.
Well, you've been extremely open and transparent. Tell us something confidential that hasn't been announced yet. No, I
Well,
try.
I
I
just
try.
did. I just did actually. You know, the fact that we're shipping mics in the pad in the next release coming out, like literally as soon as I walk out of the room here, I think we're
You'll
pushing the
tell
button
them
on
that
deploying the
thing we were
software
going to
to our
do three
data
weeks
bridge.
ago. Go now, do it now. No, let's forget NDA for a second. Forget current releases or current roadmap. Think in your head, as I said when we were talking before, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What are your, as the CTO of the company now? What's your
Yeah,
vision for the collaboration space? I've always envisioned that what you described with your microphones is something we're going to do with cameras, more than just
yeah.
front, center, back, but little cameras around a bezel and all being brought together by a processor.
Mm.
Maybe it's holographic in some way,
Hmm.
maybe it's 3D in some way without glasses with
Hmm.
lenticular screens. We know that project is going on right now, and we'll see if that has any legs. But what do you see happening in the space to be cutting edge and ahead?
Yeah, 10 years is a long time. So,
I
you
figured it
know,
was safe from an NDA perspective. Nobody's going to come back and ask why it wasn't done.
Yeah, I think our focus at Need is definitely on the multi-device distributed media kind of architect. Because you're exactly right. What you said is exactly right. I talked about doing using the microphone arrays, but absolutely, there's also the cameras, right, in all of those devices, and the intelligence to be able to select the best camera based on where people are looking. Today, with Need Center, if the majority of people are looking towards Need Center, we select that camera view. If the majority of people are looking at the main front of room screen device, then we select that camera view. But we absolutely don't want to stop there. We want to be able to select the best view of each individual from that camera, or from that camera, or from that camera, or from that camera. So you can, imagine Neat products around the room and all working in conjunction with the best microphone beam for that person who's speaking and the best camera based on where people are looking,
But
right?
video processing is a thing now where you can, open up some apps and have, virtual cameras do things.
Oh,
You can
sure.
have deep fakes go on. And
Yeah.
and there have been a couple of companies, successful and unsuccessful, that take, a camera view and kind of stretch it or unstretch it or do things with it.
Hmm.
I'm of the opinion that, if you use, telephone size 8, 16, 20 megapixel cameras around the bezel of a screen or around the table or wherever you do it, and the camera might not have a shot to go to that camera, but there might be some intelligence in the back end that takes a piece of this, a piece of that, a piece of this, reassembles the room,
Right.
and creates some sort. So I mean, I've got to think we're going in that direction because the processing power is there at this point.
Yeah, I would say, like if you look at some of the holographic offerings that are on the in the market, from Google, from Cisco, et cetera, that's essentially how they're working, right? Multiple cameras in an array, generally speaking, in a horizontal line because the application is video, so you kind of want to shoot the scene like from that perspective, right? Um, and then interpolating between multiple cameras, so you get that 3D effect of, you know, if David sees me looking from this perspective and the other day sees me looking from this perspective, because based on where my head is, based on where you're sitting, you want to, the system makes it feel like you're looking at me from that perspective, right? Because there's an array of cameras.
Like the
Um,
stereoscopic.
I just want to
exactly.
clarify that the other David is Danto, but go ahead.
Yes. Right. So yeah, I think you're right. I think those are two kind of different things, though, right? Like a camera array doing stereoscopic holographic video conferencing telepresence, whatever you want to call it, is one application. Multiple cameras around a room is a completely different thing, right? In both cases, there's some selection of which camera is best, and then compositing that into a view for the far end for the remote participants to see. And whether that compositing is done locally on the device, because as you said, processing power is always increasing, Moore's law, but also in the cloud, right? We see increasingly, like Microsoft IntelliFrame, a lot of that processing is being done cloud side, right? And there's a pendulum there as well, because doing it all in the cloud means, well, that means you're by definition decrypting, decoding, processing, compositing, re-encrypting. So what about end-to-end encryption? Right? And versus doing it on the device, you can maintain that end-to-end encryption all the way through. So there's pros and cons to those two approaches. So yeah, I think the next 10 years will be a continued advancement in all of these fronts, right? And like you talked about earlier, David, the actually it was before our session, but you and I were chatting about center of room cameras like the Neat Center and outside in cameras that other competitors are doing. And there's not a right answer or a wrong answer, right? There's sort of advantages and disadvantages. We chose to approach it from the center point of view, but I think ultimately in 10 years time frame, the right answer is a combination of both, right? Which is kind of what I alluded to with multiple Neat devices around the room. So then you have a combination of center of camera looking out at the people at the table, but also the board in the back of the room, the bar in the front of the room, maybe another bar on the side of the room, and being able to film the room from either outside in or inside out perspective.
All right, one last unfair question before we end this, and I'm prefacing.
No, I have the last question, but you go ahead.
Okay. So my last question, the unfair question, is really simple. If you take any of the Neat products and you use them for Microsoft Teams, they work beautifully. And if you use them for Zoom, they work beautifully. And
Yes.
every end user on the planet is saying, why can't that be a button? Why
Yeah.
can't I do a Zoom call and a Teams call? And the answer is that there's no technical reason why you can't provide that. Will we ever see that, or do we think companies like Zoom and Microsoft are going to be preventing that capability to switch for as long as they exist?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough question because it's a politically charged question, right? Yeah, you're
Said it
right.
was
Like
unfair.
technologically, I mean, technologically, there's no reason. But the honest, let's dig into that a little bit more. Scratch one layer beneath the surface on that one. Technologically, there's no reason why they couldn't or we couldn't as an industry, but there is work that would be required, right? The Microsoft Teams Room application is not designed as an app. Think about it like a software app, any software application running on an iOS or Android phone mobile platform. It's designed to be foregrounded and backgrounded, right? It's in the software developers who developed that app did it with knowing that it's going to be backgrounded, and they built the software application to be accepting of that. Microsoft Teams rooms, Zoom rooms, WebEx on the Cisco devices, Google Meet on Google Meet devices. The applications weren't built to be foregrounded and backgrounded. They expect to be running all the time. They're calling home back to Microsoft TAC or Zoom ZDM or WebEx Control Hub, etc. When the app is backgrounded, in your Control Hub, in your TAC or ZDM, they look like they're disconnected. That's not good. So there is some software development required to make it possible, but technologically, there's nothing stopping it. And then politically, charged because, what's in the best interest of Microsoft and Zoom? Do they want to enable that? Lots of customers are begging for it, but the current approach is the direct guest join using WebRTC is sort of the industry standard for any app to talk to any other backend. Microsoft can talk to Zoom, WebEx can talk to Zoom, Microsoft, Zoom can talk to the Microsoft, WebEx, and Google, and those combinations as well. As Neat, we're like, hey, we're a hardware platform. We're happy to support all this stuff. So not only can you run Microsoft Teams and Zoom on our devices, and in the future, perhaps others like Google Meet, for example, potentially in the future, but also our whole App Hub strategy built on top of Neat Pulse, where Neat Pulse becomes like an app store for collaboration apps like what I demonstrated with the the sharing a Miro board into a Microsoft Teams call, right? So we have 50 plus partners signed up to partner with us on AppHub to be able to run. We don't want people running Angry Birds on Neat boards, but
Yeah.
any app,
unless you're sitting on a trade show floor.
Well, you raise a really good point, though. A lot of customers are asking for it, but a lot of customers aren't asking for it, and that's a tricky line. And I'm one that often says, don't listen to your customers because they'll steer you down the path. And so it is a balancing act. I have a question for you more on a personal level because I'm aspiring to be more like you, a man of the world, traveling all over the world. I was in Oslo last summer. I'll be back in Sweden soon, and I was just in London. When you travel around, I want to ask you each city: San Francisco, London, and Oslo. What is the one meal that you not necessarily the name of the restaurant, but what is the one meal that you try to have? Like, for example, when you're in Oslo, one of your favorite things when you're in San Francisco. Give us a little bit of a world menu here.
I wish you're really putting me on the spot there, David, because I am not a foodie. Dave, sorry, I am not a foodie. I wish I was. I have lots of friends who are foodies. I was in Boston a few weeks ago with my great friend and mentor and former colleague Jonathan Rosenberg. He's a big foodie. We've gone to Michelin star restaurants together, but that's not what that's not my personal thing. No, I would say, California, London, and Oslo are all incredible places for different reasons, right? And one of the things that I love about London is, the variety of restaurants, the variety of evening, entertainment, but also like the amount of green space, the public parks. Every park in London has a cafe in it where you can get great food, like pub food, not Michelin star food. Great beer. You can hang out in the grass, have a beer, have your pub food. I love it. I love London. It's incredible. And you can get everywhere.
Well, one thing about London, I always try to get Indian food when I'm in London, but I think it's harder to find because London's having such a food scene right now that all these new restaurants are opening up, and So anyway, we can talk about food. I'll have to give Jonathan a call and ask him about some.
I have to say, coming from California, I love Mexican food, and that is hard to find in London and Oslo. Sorry, just kidding. It doesn't exist.
Well, I have a lot of respect for what you've done in your career and all the patents you've created and the products you've helped bring to market. I hope you're smart enough in Oslo to have not bitten the line and drank the aquavit.
The aquavit, yeah, I have. If you go to a really good restaurant, like a Christmas dinner, for example, up in Holmenkollen by the ski jump, there's a fantastic restaurant up there, and they did like a 5-course meal for Christmas dinner, and they served an aquavit with each one, like a pairing, and it was actually good. It was actually good. Yeah.
Now I don't feel like you're as smart as you were when you started the call. Everybody drink the aquavit. So. Dave Michels, thank you. Kevin McMenamy, thank you very much. We definitely want to stay on top of what's going on with Neat and stay in touch with you more. That's it for this week's UC Weekly News. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next week.